Got everybody? Okay, I call to order the policy committee meeting for December 19th. It's Thursday, it's about 1:30. In attendance so far, we have Mr. Steele and Mr. Birch from the Assembly. We have Mr. Sullivan from the Mayor's Office. Mr. Campbell is here from DOT. Missing right now is our DEC representative, and I'm not sure if they will attend or not. We'll, of course, make a note if they do show up. Craig, can you go through the public involvement announcement, which you do so well?
It's been a while since I gave it, though. All AMATS meetings are public meetings. The public is invited to comment on any item that we have before us. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by staff or a consultant. The committee will then be given a chance to discuss it, and at that point, the public will be invited to comment. And when the matter comes back before the committee for deliberation, that they will have it before them. So,
Okay, thank you. We have in front of us an agenda for today. Does anybody have any corrections or modifications they'd like to make to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
second.
Moved and seconded. Any objections? Seeing none, agenda is accepted as presented. We have minutes from October 24th. I assume we have all scrupulously reviewed these minutes and have found nothing to disagree with.
I was not in attendance at that meeting, so someone else will have to
Okay?
make the motion.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Any objection to the minutes as presented here today? Seeing none, minutes are accepted. Business items. Mr. Lyon, I believe you will be taking us through the UPWP.
Yes, and I won't go into phenomenal detail unless we get all sorts of questions, but this is, just a reminder, this is our work program for the next 2 years. This is the effort by staff, by my staff, and by the Health and Human Services staff when they do work for us, and also to a degree by some of your staff when they do some planning efforts for us. So this is a 2-year work program, and then we have the 1-year budget, which is the fold-out program. We do a 1-year budget because you never know what the next year is going to hold with the federal government and what they might do with the allocation. So we budget on a 1-year basis here. And most of the tasks in here are similar to what was in there last year, although we do have a couple of new ones in there which are highlighted in red back in the big table. The table itself shows all of the federal funds that come in for planning purposes. It includes the AMATS planning funds, along with some funds that are in our TIP. We have the traffic control signalization in the TIP. We have the MTP update in the TIP. It also includes some federal funds from FTA to transit, some EPA grants, et cetera. So the big item for us is the fact that we have gone from a dollar figure of about $840,000 for the last 4 or 5 years for the AMATS program to $1.2 million. There are a couple of different reasons for that. If you remember earlier in this year, we looked at our urbanized area boundary, which we do based on the census, among other things, and we added some census tracts to our urbanized area boundary in Eagle River. And there are also some changes that occurred in map 21, and those changes combined with the addition to the boundary increase the amount of planning funds that come to the AMATS area. So what we created based on the TAC recommendations and the recommendations, what I created, I should say, based on the recommendations of the TAC along with the suggestions and recommendations from DOT staff, was a budget predicated on 2 additional staff people. And so far we have had approval for 1 additional staff person. The monies that went into that second staff person, the suggestion of the TAC was to either try to get another staff person or to utilize that additional about $100,000 in consultant services, thus finding someone in the city who might be able to come in and help us on a contractual basis to do that. Don't know that there's someone out there like that right now.
So you've got a room full of people who would probably be willing to talk to you after.
All of those folks are probably looking at going through the RFP process and all that sort of stuff and doing it with a group of stuff. And this was more of a, let's find one person who can do this that happens to have a lot of spare time. So I don't know that that's necessarily going to work out. It may be that we're going to hope to add a staff person during the year, but that remains to be seen. We'll work on that. The work program, again, has gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission, has gone through the TAC, it was out for public comment. The only public comment that we received was from a member of the AMATS Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, asking to make sure that we continue to provide enough staff support to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and to make sure that the implementation plans that are included in both the bicycle plan and the non-motorized pedestrian plan be implemented. So, other than that, I'm happy to answer questions, but basically this is the work program, the staff time. There's some consultant services in here, but mostly it's staff time spent on these projects next year.
Okay, with that, I think I'll open it up to the public. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Lyon or the committee on this document? Seeing a lot there. Anybody, Mr. Steele, do you have any?
I do not
comments?
at the moment.
Mr. Birch?
I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Sullivan? I've got a couple things I'd like to ask about, Craig. I'm just curious, and maybe I should know this, but how do we run this on a calendar year basis when most of our funding comes in from on a federal year or a state year basis?
So my understanding is the reason we do this is because the AMAT staff, for the most part, are municipal employees. And the municipal budget is done on a calendar year basis. So the municipal budget starts January 1 through December 31st. Our federal funding is, it can work with that requirement.
Okay.
So
So it actually, the federal funding comes out of 2 different years, but it just, when it presents here, it comes into one municipal year.
I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, I had a secondary question, and I wish that somebody from DEC was here, but I've been kind of wishing and hoping and prodding to get the air quality cloud lifted off of Anchorage, if you will, for it seems like forever, and I think we're slowly making progress there. And, you know, we've gone from a non-attainment area to a maintenance area, and I think we're trying to take the next step down that ladder into a less onerous oversight. Would that change then our air quality components, these 300 level items within this budget, if we reach that next lower rung on the penalty ladder?
What we have written in here is based on the Department of Health and Human Services staff, their thoughts on moving to that limited maintenance plan. They're assuming that we're going to get there, and thus what we'll have to do is taken into account here.
Okay, great.
I know Ms. Heil at our TAC meeting, and Bart, I don't remember the exact language, but she went down to Seattle, I believe. I think it was down in Seattle, but she did have a specific meeting with EPA, and it sounded like it was looking like it was close, or looking like there weren't any major stumbling blocks. So it sounds like there's nothing in the way of getting that limited maintenance plan approved.
Well, I'd hate to have Fairbanks be successful in this and us not be successful. That would really
Can't say that.
be a challenge. Strive to get that done.
Right, and you would think that with the elimination of the IM program locally, which was approved by all levels of government, that would help us get to that point.
Well, I feel like I'm kind of in quicksand on this thing. It seems like we've been trying to do this for a couple of years, and it seems like the carrot's always just a little further in front of us.
Yeah, the approval process through EPA is 18 months.
Yeah.
It could be shorter,
Okay.
but it rarely
Have
is.
we made a request?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have it. It's gone through every state process that it can, and has been submitted to the EPA.
And then I think the latest thing was the government shutdown is, you know, they parlayed a 2 or 3 week shutdown into a several month delay.
Justification for.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that it sounds like the TAC at least identified that, or whoever's identified it and accommodated. That really was my concern, so I congratulate you on that. Thank you. Does anybody else have any follow-on questions?
Yeah, we'll move to accept the Unified Planning Work Program.
Second.
Moved and second. Any objections or further comments? Seeing none, it's been approved unanimously. I guess now we have informational reports. We have In the ITS category today, we've got, I believe, Dan Breeden here from DOT to talk about our State Transportation Operations Center study or some such. Dan?
Thank you.
If I may,
Certainly. Oh, I'm sorry.
we have a very interesting topic for you today. Yes, we do have a great speaker for you. Just real quickly, I wanted to let you know, for those who may not know, ITS, or Intelligent Transportation Systems, is using technology, advanced technology in an integrated manner to improve the surface transportation system.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you identify yourself for the record?
Oh, excuse me,
Sorry.
Vivian Underwood. Amen. Both institutional integration and technological integration are required. So across agencies and jurisdictions, it improves the function of using ITS if there's more integration. The ITS regional architecture for Anchorage is due for an update. We'll be hiring a consultant and we'll begin work next year. Now, the current Anchorage architecture does call for a local transportation operations center, traffic operations center. Likewise, the statewide ITS architecture calls for a statewide traffic operations center with related functions of coordinated incident management and coordinated emergency management. Now, so obviously, it would be nice if we could have some collaboration between the two. There might be some opportunities there. So our speaker today is Mr. Dan Breeden. He's with the DOT and PF Commissioner's Office. He's the Special Programs Manager for the State Traffic Operations Center, Concept of Operations Exploration. So he's going to give you an overview of the project and give it to you.
Thank you.
Well, I was hoping to have a draft report in hand last week, but we had a few delays in scheduling some interviews with folks who we thought were important to fulfill what we thought would be the necessary informational part of that. We hope to have that now on the 23rd. And what we're doing now is just, it's a needs assessment, and from that we'll make a determination on where we want to go as far as the concept exploration and then the feasibility report on the final concept. So I don't have a lot to tell you, but I can answer your questions or go ahead.
Is there any tie whatsoever to the railroad? I mean, when you talk transportation systems, or is that all federal, that's all railroad stuff? And the reason I was thinking of this intelligent transportation system, I mean, supposedly they're all locked up because they've got to have some huge, massive intelligent transportation.
Positive train.
Positive train control?
Yeah. But I'm assuming that's all separate and apart, different funding sources and everything, or I don't know how much integration is involved in there, if any.
There's basically nothing. We have agreements with the railroad, obviously, where we cross right-of-ways.
Right.
We're working on some other things with the Goodyear tunnel agreements and stuff like that, but as far as any integration with the railroad here, the answer is no.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Steele?
Just for my benefit, since I'm the new guy here, what are the components of the integrated transportation system? I mean, what types of activities take place in order to integrate the system?
That's some of what we're looking at now, but we're looking at traffic sensors, way in motion, weather detectors, stuff for real-time information. The two things that we hear most from the public is let us know when there's something ahead of us, so good information, and if they can't go, they go do something else. If they do go, they want to keep moving.
So it's a lot more than an automated system. To have a center, it seems to me, you've got people in there making decisions also.
When it comes to day-to-day stuff, this would be a manned, the concept is a manned or center 24/7, because you're talking about transportation and incident management along with operations. That's a big one these days, is incident management and trying to get something moving, maybe not to capacity right away, but at least keep them moving.
So if you have to divert traffic, you would pick up a route and maybe change timing on some of the controls.
All those things. The signage, we're looking at we've trained in the, this is not one of my roles, but in the traffic incident management, the agreement we made and with the feds, we've had them come, we've done 2 training sessions to train APD, troopers, fire, other emergency services around the state in traffic incident management to reevaluate the situation while keeping themselves safe, but get traffic flowing again as quickly as possible. And we've got one training center in Fairbanks and one in here.
Yeah, I think our number one complaint is when the Glen Highway gets bottlenecked up for an accident.
Yeah.
There's multiple jurisdictions involved, and it's a little bit confusing as to who's got what jurisdiction to do things. And essentially, the investigative people need a certain amount of time to do their work there. And sometimes there's trouble understanding, who's on first and how long it's going to be and who's got the responsibility to notify the public and where the public can find that information too. So that's probably the biggest issue that we get, I think, on a.
Right, and that's why we added, in our 5th E now, is the information, because information is what people want. We've heard repeatedly from everybody is if I can't go, if you can tell me before I get to that last exit, I go have dinner, I go to movies, go do something else, pretend to go when the time comes.
So we might be talking about electronic billboards along the highways or something, or, signage.
Variable message signs is
Yeah.
one of the topics, yes.
So Dan, what kind of timeline are we on this thing as far as, you say, draft report in the next month or so and then
Draft next week.
next week?
And I'm gonna condense that up, hopefully have something in the commissioner's hand by mid-January, early February, and then a meeting sometime late January or early February.
Kind of try to get a direction forward then and
Right.
sometime early next year, then is what
Right.
you're saying? All right, thank you. Any other questions for Dan while he's here? Okay, thanks, Dan. Next on our information reports, Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Project Phase 1.
Hello, my name is Nicole Reen, and I'm with Professional and Technical Services. We are project managers for the municipality for the Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Project. We have a term contract with Public Works, Project Management and Engineering, to provide management services for various projects here in the municipality and Eagle River. Dean Kars is the project manager. Unfortunately, he's not here today, but he's also with PTS. And on the design side of things, we have Aaron Christie, who is the project manager for the project with Dowell HKM. Steve Noble is the contract manager and also involved in the public involvement side of things. And Ann Brooks is actually the public involvement coordinator with Brooks and Associates. And Gary Katzian, whom you all know, with Kittleson, is providing some traffic analysis and informational stuff for the design. So right now, we're in the concept report phase, and with that, I'll give it to Steve to go ahead and divulge more into it.
Thank you. My name is Steve Noble. I'm project manager with Dowell HKM, and we've got about a 10-minute presentation. It is an informational presentation, so if I'm going to try to give you enough background to get to the end of the story, but if I gloss over something in my efforts to keep this short for your benefits, then please feel free to ask me any clarifying questions. So this is a municipally managed, state-funded project that is an offshoot of the previous studies in the Eagle River area, particularly the Central Business District revitalization, circulation plans and studies that have been completed over the last 4 or 5 years. And we're in the concept report phase in the municipal process, and we'll soon be moving into a design study report and final design package. But our primary objective is to create a connection between Business Boulevard and Eagle River Road to relieve some congestion and to resolve some of the circulation issues in Eagle River. Next. As far as the project schedule and where we are in the process, this is a quick glance. As I mentioned, we're in the concept report phase. In this phase, we are doing a series of public workshops and technical advisory committee meetings with stakeholders in the area, and we've had 2 meetings with each group so far. We are working to flesh out the issues, identify the alternatives, and then take those alternatives into the design study report phase, where we'll narrow down to a preferred alternative, and then we'll go into detailed design and right-of-way acquisition. There's about $8.5 million or so in state funding that's been allocated for this project. I think it was in FY13 or legislative package. Next. As I mentioned, this project comes from the CBD revitalization plan. It also, looking further back, the circulation study and the previous comprehensive plan. Next. This figure right here is the graphic that illustrates a lot of the projects that were identified in the circulation study and a lot of the improvements that worked out of that. It was a very collaborative effort with the public and looking at improving the circulation, particularly in the core part of Eagle River. And the projects that are shown here in green are the projects that are really relevant and the higher priority projects that came out of that study. And this project is called Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Phase 1 because it's took really the highest priority project from that circulation study, which was to connect Business Boulevard to Eagle River Road. Not necessarily along where this green line is shown here, but to connect that point with that point. And then these other lines that are shown in green here, these other projects are projects that are related to this project in that the circulation that happens on one affects all of them. And so they've also been kind of peripheral considerations as we're looking at how to make this connection. But this is the primary objective of our project. Next. And like I said, those other projects are kind of within this larger circulation area, and we looked at that entire area as we're looking at making the connection between Business Boulevard located here and Eagle River Road here. Next. So, can you go back one? As we started our project, it became fairly apparent right off the bat that it was not going to be possible to just make a connection between these two roads without looking at how that affected primarily the circulation on the highway and the off-ramp and the circulation at the artillery interchange. The state and municipality pooled some resources and performed an additional analysis of the operations on the freeway, particularly between Highland and all the way up to North Eagle River access, and looked at interchange options for Artillery Road to see what limitations and what the operational effects were of putting in a fourth leg on this intersection, which has already got some operational and circulation issues because of the short distance between the interchange and the Eagle River Road. And so a lot of where we're headed and some of the limitations on this project arose out are the conclusions that came from that prior study. Next. What it came down to was we really were not able to put that fourth leg in without doing some other things to improve capacity and to offset the capacity impacts of putting a fourth leg on. Right now it's a three-legged intersection, so it operates fairly efficiently, and yet it still has some of these issues. And so primarily we've been looking at how to improve the capacity for the left turn movements coming off of Eagle River Road, the left turn movements onto Eagle River Road, and then how to resolve the issues with circulation on this movement from the off-ramp on the freeway onto Eagle River Road. Those are the three primary movements that we were looking at how to improve. Next. Okay, so as I mentioned, the hook ramp to remove traffic onto Eagle River Road, left turn storage for left turns on the Eagle River and Artillery Road, and then widening the Old Glen Highway at the intersection to accommodate two left turn lanes and through lanes. Let's go to the next one that's got a better graphic. Next. Okay, so right now there are only single left turn lanes from Eagle River Road onto Artillery and single left turn lanes from Old Glen Highway onto Eagle River Road. But by widening the intersection to put dual lefts onto Artillery and then widening Old Glen Highway to put dual lefts onto Eagle River Road, we're able to add significant capacity to the intersection. In addition to widening for the left turn lane, we need to widen, we need to maintain enough width and add enough width so that we can have dual through lanes at the intersection as well. And we wouldn't drop that outside lane until on the far side of the intersection. It would drop before it gets to the interchange. The interchange itself only has a single lane, so we're trying not to have to tackle the bridge at this point. So we would shrink it down to one lane before we cross the bridge. The right turn lane coming off of the interchange itself, one of the big problems at this intersection, there's about 600 or 700 cars during the peak hour that want to come off the interchange and turn right. And the problem is that there's a real short distance between these two intersections, and they get mixed in with the through traffic, and the signage is confusing for some, and they're not able to consistently be in that right turn lane, and you get a lot of people who really want to come downtown who are in that right turn lane, and then they're trying to weave over in this short distance that's right here. And then vice versa, you get some people who are in the left lane thinking they can come up here and turn right when they're actually in the wrong lane. And so one of the things that's being considered here is to take that decision point and move that decision point further back out and lengthen the off-ramp and have some overhead signage so that you would clarify that the folks that are attempting to get onto Eagle River Road, they're going to be in the far right lane, and the folks that are headed downtown would be in the left lane. And then when you get up to the intersection, there would be a barrier or a median of some sort that would actually prevent them from changing their mind once they got off the freeway. And so there would be this dedicated right turn lane that would come around and merge in with Eagle River Road. And that has some issues and concerns that we'd have to resolve. There's some utilities in this area, right-of-way impacts to the university property here, potential impacts to this driveway location at their parking lot, but very much necessary to make the operations of this intersection work more efficiently. Frankly, regardless of whether or not a fourth leg is added, that ought to be done. And just so you know, this right turn lane, this hook ramp is actually included in the state's Glen Highway Capacity Improvements Project as a potential enhancement that will be evaluated by the design build teams, provided it doesn't get changed in the actual RFP that's coming out next month.
Does that require widening of the bridge going over the highway?
It does not. It does not. The bridge and the interchange itself would remain as it exists today. So doing those three things to this intersection, adding the dual lefts in the north and the westbound direction, and then adding this dedicated right, adds sufficient capacity to this intersection that you can add the fourth leg onto this intersection and still be at about 80% capacity. Whereas today, it's up around full capacity or over capacity during peak periods. So you'll notice there's still one movement that's not being allowed under this configuration. We are not proposing that you would be able to come down here and turn left onto this leg. There's just not room between the intersection itself and the interchange to be able to allow that left turn movement to queue up and store. There's not enough green time to give that left turn movement adequate time at the intersection. So you would not be able to do that. Otherwise, all other movements would be allowed. You would have a through, a right, and a left coming out of this fourth leg. Everything else would remain as it's shown. Next. So
Now, the last one, is there a right-of-way for that fourth leg? Or
can you go back?
what do you have to?
Yeah, where's it go?
Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna get into.
Okay.
So first of all, we had to be confident that it was even possible to add a fourth leg to this intersection. And now we're gonna look at, okay, now that we've got the confidence that there's capacity and we're not gonna screw up the system worse than it is already by adding this fourth leg, how do we make that fourth leg happen, and where does the right-of-way come from? And so as we started looking at that, we looked at some of the basic assumptions in our analysis of that fourth leg was we were assuming about 100-foot wide right-of-way, so minor arterial collector level standards, looking at a road, sidewalks, bike trails, curb and gutters, so trying to make sure we accommodated all modes of traffic in the right-of-way. And then we also tried to make sure that we were minimizing costs. As you'll see, there's some properties that we're trying to see if we can take advantage of some properties that are either vacant or potentially for sale in the configuration. And then we're also looking at ways that we can improve the internal circulation for the businesses that are in that area as part of this as well. Next. So this is the first alignment that we evaluated. This is the church property here, and the church is located right there just outside just outside the proposed right-of-way. We have had some discussions with property owners in the area, and the church, we've had some discussions with the church folks, the owners of this church, and they are looking at expanding this site and potentially reconstructing a larger building, and based on the discussions with them, that's been envisioned kind of over in this corner of their property. The fourth leg that we're looking at adding would still acquire a significant amount of property from them. This purple area here is undeveloped, but it also belongs to the church property. There's a vacant lot right here that we're targeting as well for this configuration. This lot right here is a big condominium complex. If we have to take part of this, then we would end up removing part of this building, and is a larger can of worms that potentially could be avoided by skirting to the right of it. And then there's some properties that are in the area of Business Park Boulevard. If this configuration were constructed, all of these side streets would require some reconfiguration to tie in more at a 90-degree type angle. This configuration would convert Business Boulevard to be more of the primary route north and south. This section of Business Boulevard, this would probably be a signal, or at the very least, Business Boulevard would be stop controlled coming into this road. The advantages, and this is true of all the alternatives, the advantages of this kind of the fourth leg here is we also can potentially improve circulation into this part of, there's a lot of businesses, Pizza Man and some other popular businesses in this area that don't have great access coming off of Artillery Road. These are narrow rights of way, one-way streets, and being able to potentially provide some accesses off of an extension of Business Boulevard is a benefit in that area. Next. Alignment B is more of a collector type road, and whereas alignment A is more of a minor arterial. It's really realigning Business Boulevard. In this option, we would create more of a new connection between Business Boulevard and the fourth leg. Again, very similar configuration, but largely leaves this intersection as is. This movement would be the more primary movement. Probably still be a signal. Most likely, based on the volumes, there'd be a signal at that a new signal at that location. A little bit less right-of-way, still avoids the condos. A little bit cheaper project because Business Boulevard stays the same. Next.
So everybody coming in or coming out to the business park has one more light to go through.
Yep. But they would be avoiding the lights that are on Old Glen Highway, which there's a light here and there's a light here, and these during peak periods, those intersections are very much congested, and there's access issues all along there. Alignment C is the primary driver behind alignment C is just to create more of a linear alignment that improves the sight distance. It's much more of a minor arterial type configuration, and really it just bites off the condominiums is the primary difference between this and the other option. It bites off that there would be some right-of-way acquisition and some demolition of part of the condominiums here at the end of that property. Everything else is about the same, and you're still going to have some reconfiguration of some of these driveways. I think under this configuration, this section of right-of-way this section of road would probably go away, and you just have T's coming off of this road. A little bit more right-of-way acquisition, probably a little bit more costly for the condominium acquisition. So those are the three configurations for the fourth leg that we're looking at. Next. In short, this summarizes some of the issues that we're coming up with, but we've got at the intersection at Eagle River Road, we've got to figure out how to get the space to build the dual rights in the two directions, the dedicated hook ramp off of Glen Highway. And then once we are able to upgrade that intersection, then we've got to figure out which is the best option for making that fourth leg, and working with the stakeholders and our technical advisory committee to to do what is going to be the best long-term solution for Eagle River. All of the options improve things on the old Glen Highway, and to varying degrees. And at this point, we are planning on taking these options back to the public one more time, back to the technical advisory committee one more time, and then we'll be moving into the design study phase. Most likely, the money that we have available for the project is not going to be sufficient enough to be able to construct the intersection improvements that we have, as well as acquire the right-of-way and build the fourth leg of Business Boulevard that extends Business Boulevard there. So there will likely be, our phase one will likely be further phased, or unless additional funding is made available for the project. Any questions?
Well, I'm sure there'll be quite a few. Let's take, does anybody in the public have any questions first before we start grilling Steve up here from the front? Mr. Steele?
I asked mine out of
Bush?
order probably.
A great briefing. I drive into Pizza Man frequently, coming, so I'm very familiar with that, and this is going to be a much-needed improvement, and I appreciate the brief. I don't think we really talked cost. Is there a wide variation in, I mean, I guess it's way down the road, but is there a wide variation in budget for WAG on the cost?
Aaron, can you comment on the cost estimation process so far?
Yeah, and we're not at that stage of the concept report. We really don't get into the cost. It's more problem identification, looking at all the challenges, opportunities, and we start to look at cost during the design study report.
Oh, good work, good brief, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Obviously, you gave 3 options. Is there a preferred option at this stage, or you're still in that process of public involvement and getting to a preferred option?
Right. As part of the concept report, we specifically avoid trying to identify a preferred option until we get beyond the concept report phase and get into the design study phase. At that point, we're trying to make sure that we flesh out all the issues and give an objective analysis as we can moving into the design study phase.
And if you'd like, I could actually give just a 2-minute briefing. We've actually had a number of meetings this week with specific property owners on Tuesday afternoon and met with each one at length. We were able to schedule 5 different properties. Give you a quick feel on how they feel about the overall project.
I don't think it's probably necessary. I'm probably thinking the people who live in the condos don't want to have their condos removed.
Well, we talked to the owner there, and it's actually not the condos. They were originally constructed as condominiums, but now it's one apartment complex. And so, pessimistically, if the alignment C were to go through, it would impact 3 of the buildings A, B, and C, which is 31 units, roughly 2 people per unit, so that's 62 residences, and generally they're on the low-income housing side of things. And of course, there's part of the issue there is there's limited low-income housing right there in the core area of Eagle River where there's walking distance to everything.
So I guess as our part of the public input, I would suggest option B, not removing apartments from low-income people would be my suggestion, I guess. That's all I had.
Steve, in your, I forgot the name of what you're developing now, the report you're currently developing, are costs going to be part of that report, or are those costs not going to be identified even in a conceptual overview until you get into the DSR part?
Aaron? I think at some level, we'll probably have planning level cost estimates assessed for them, but we won't be developing cross sections and running down the topo, running the templates for them or anything like that. It's still very much crayons on a map. We'll probably have planning level analysis of the cost for each of the corridors. So that's certainly a consideration. We want to. It's hard to give the public enough information until you say, all right, here's the right of way you need to acquire, and then at least a swag at what those properties would cost to acquire.
I know it's a circular discussion, when you can't have one without the other, but at some point you've got to step into the pool and throw a number up and then listen to the blowback on it, one way or another. And I guess that from my perspective, that would be a component in the ultimate selection of the alignment, whether it's, if they're all within 10% of the same cost, it probably isn't significant, but if they're more than that, it might be significant. So I guess that leads me into my second question. Right now, this has got no federal money in it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so if we identify a funding differential here between what we've got in our piggy bank and what we need to build this project, I guess there might be some discussion about federalizing it. What, I guess I'll just make the comment, I won't even ask you the straight question, but I guess from my perspective, that would probably take us back to almost step one, I think, on this process again. It'd probably cost us 2 or 3 years, I'd imagine, if you had to go back and go through the federal process on that. Is that consistent with what you might be thinking in terms of public involvement, formal NEPA process, federal approval of process steps and all those things?
Yeah, well, certainly the municipal process that we followed so far is much different than the state or the federal process for these types of projects. And it has been developed as if it were going to remain state-funded. I don't think that there would be a significant amount of rework, primarily because we still have not even got to the preferred alternative yet. But suffice it to say, on a project of this type that acquires right-of-way in a new alignment, my experience is that those can be challenging from the NEPA perspective and would take longer to develop than if it were to remain state-funded.
You could have just said yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know that we have to redo a bunch of things, but project would take 2 or 3 years longer, I would guess.
And I guess that brings me then to another question, maybe for you, Craig, in terms of, I assume this project, I think let me ask the question straight out. Did we approve as an AMATS the downtown Eagle River plan such that it is, I seem to recall that we did.
The CBD study came
Yeah.
through AMATS, yes.
And we concurred or blessed or approved or whatever we did with that. But
And then the assembly approved it.
But other than that concurrence in a planning level, AMATS has not had any funding involvement, and it's probably shown in Table 8 or something as a auxiliary funding, but it's not anywhere in the AMATS funding stream right now, is it?
This project is in the short range in the MTP,
MTP, right?
which is, as we're about to do our TIP process of ranking and scoring all of the nominated projects, this is one that would be ranked and scored because it is in the short range of
Okay.
MTP. So we will rank and score it. When we rank and score, we don't necessarily look at it as in what's going to fund it. I mean, the idea is you're ranking it for the TIP, so you're suggesting it would be in the federal program because the TIP is all federal funds.
Yeah, that's my point.
But you do look at a cost-benefit analysis, and you look at right-of-way impacts and the different things that would impact your ability to build this project. You could look at projects that will require a big right-of-way take, or they have wetlands impacts, and those are things that we factor in when we do the ranking and scoring. So that's clearly something that would factor in here.
I think we're facing, kind of a crossroads on a lot of projects we've got going on right now in terms of these state-funded starts that we've got, where we've got a lot, and I know we at DOT have several of them, and I think we're going to talk about maybe all doing interchange next month here as a presentation. We've got a lot of projects where we've got a chunk of state money, probably not as much money as we need, and I think we're going to be looking at some real tough decisions in the future about how we move those projects forward, because if we get into the federal process, a lot of these things, it's going to be 2 or 3 steps back, just kind of not necessarily lose all the work we've done, Steve, but certainly the feds are sticklers for them approving process steps and concurring with each step as it goes. And there'll be a lot of rework, I think, on some of these things. And I don't know that I've got any particular brilliance to solve this issue, and I'm not even sure most of you guys are going to be here in the next 6 months, but.
Oh, thank you. About your confidence.
No, one of you. I guess maybe I'm just worrying out loud about my own future problems here, but I do think as policy level decisions are made, these are things that I think are going to be tough for us as a policy committee and as a state and as a city too, to figure out how to get through these things. So The last comment I had, Steve, was, and this is a technical one, so it's a lot more fun. I noticed you were precluding left turns into your new road there. So in effect, you're almost setting up kind of the basic work for a couplet there then, aren't you? I mean, doesn't that kind of push a lot of the, I guess you call it northbound traffic onto the old road, and maybe a lot of the southbound traffic onto the new road?
We go back to the CBD.
And at some point, would a couplet then become an option in the future as traffic grows out there?
So, good observation. Back, one more. So So in the core circulation study, there were several alternatives that were evaluated on a more global perspective for the circulation study. And one of those options that was evaluated was to create a couplet situation between the Glen Highway and Business Boulevard. And that's certainly one of the options. And the reason why this particular project became one of the higher priorities was because it was this connection between Business Boulevard and Eagle River Road was common to all three of the scenarios they were looking at, including the couplet.
Right.
And so they could move forward with this project and not have to make a decision on the couplet yet
Right.
until they get some of the pieces in place and start to let those issues flesh out. And so in that light, you have to look at this project and does alternative A, B, and C equally get you to the possibility of adding a couplet, or not, or maybe the couplet is not the ultimate solution. But that's one of the considerations as we're looking at the three options, in addition to cost and impacts and everything else.
Do you preclude the left turn on all three of those options?
All of the scenarios that. No, the answer is no. If there's some of the scenarios whereby this connection is made that the left turn is potentially needed. The reason it's primarily precluded now is just because you can't do it with the interchange. But when we evaluated alternative interchange types with the state and the municipal stakeholders, this interchange itself is one of the projects that needs to get reconstructed fairly soon.
Sure.
And under a tight diamond configuration, or another one of the alternative configurations that we came up with for artillery interchange, that left turn could potentially be added back in at a later date.
Well, I kind of like the idea of not allowing it to start with, and just letting traffic develop that way, and I think it gets you halfway to where you want to be. And obviously, every movement that you defer out of an intersection makes it a more efficient intersection for the other movements you've got. And if the growth continues out there into such a point where you do need the couplet in the future, you're not taking away a left turn from somebody that's gotten used to it over the last 10 years. So
Exactly.
I think it provides better access than you've got today, but it also has a hint of the future in it. I kind of like the concept. I like it. Mr. Steele?
I'm just wondering about the movement of the bridge, Eagle River Bridge that we had talked about at the last meeting, whether that provides any opportunities for us in terms of the takeoff from the highway.
We're diverging into other things here, but yes, it does allow, if we move that bridge, it allows us to potentially use the old road as a frontage road. And that is a pretty compelling reason to move that bridge during construction, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
I don't know what there is up around there in terms of whether there would be
You know,
more takeage or more.
I think you've heard the saying, the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, conceptually, at 10,000 feet, it looks pretty easy to connect that old road in and call it a frontage road and drop it right in this intersection. But when you start looking at the profile grades, the businesses, the driveways, the other things, it gets a little gnarly. But
Certainly would make your backup to the light a lot less of a
yeah,
problem.
absolutely. And it would allow you to get from the two interchanges without going on the main road, too. A lot of people that are getting back into their school or whatever, they don't have to come out on the interchange, they can get to Yosemite by the frontage road.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of attraction to it, but, you know, there's no such thing as.
All things in their time.
Exactly. Okay, have we got any other questions for Mr. Noble? Thank you for your presentation. I think we've exhausted our informational reports. We get to the committee comments. Does anybody, Mr. Steele, any comments for the good of the assembly here?
I think I made them. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Birch?
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, be safe, be warm, and take it till you love them.
Be back afterwards.
Okay. I'm inclined to make any further comments. Our next meeting this body is January 23rd, right back here at 1:30. And with that, unless there's any objections, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Adjourn.
Double check.